A millionaire spots four boys who look exactly like him and learns they are his sons, raised by a gifted pianist with a past. Bound by love and shaken by betrayal, will this family overcome society's judgment and build a future together? Before we get into the story, comment below where in the world you are watching from today. Alex Sterling III had everything a man could want. At 35, he was one of New York's most successful tech entrepreneurs, with a penthouse overlooking Central Park and a beautiful fiancée from one of the city's wealthiest families. But money and success couldn't buy peace of mind, and lately, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing in his life. That spring morning started like any other. Alex walked down Fifth Avenue in his perfectly tailored suit, checking his phone for the latest stock updates. His company's shares were up again, and Victoria, his fiancée, had sent him 3 messages about their upcoming engagement party at the Plaza Hotel. "Everything has to be perfect," Victoria had insisted. "Daddy's inviting all the right people." Alex was about to reply when something caught his eye. Across the street, 4 identical little boys around 5 years old were walking with a woman in her early 30s. Alex froze. The boys had his sharp blue eyes, his high cheekbones, and his mother's distinctive nose, but their skin was a beautiful shade of brown, and their curly hair formed perfect dark halos around their heads. "Come on, boys," the woman said, her voice warm but firm. "We don't want to be late for piano lessons." Alex watched as they disappeared into a music school. His heart was racing. Those boys, they looked exactly like him. But how was that possible? The meeting he was heading to suddenly seemed unimportant. Alex followed them into the building, keeping his distance. He heard piano music coming from one of the practice rooms and peeked through the small window in the door. The woman was sitting at the piano, showing the boys how to position their hands on the keys. "Remember what I always tell you?" she asked. "Music comes from the heart," the boys answered in unison, giggling. Alex pulled out his phone and did a quick search. The sign on the door read, "Ms. Washington's Piano Studio." It didn't take long to find her. Trinity Washington, former child prodigy, graduate of Juilliard. As he read about her, memories from his past came flooding back. 12 years ago, his college friend James had asked him for a favor. James was working at a prestigious fertility clinic and needed high-achieving donors for their program. Alex had agreed, mostly to help his friend, partly because the money would help pay off his student loans. He'd almost forgotten about it. Until now. For the next week, Alex couldn't focus on anything else. He hired a private investigator who confirmed what he already knew in his heart. Trinity Washington had used his donation to have her boys, Noah, Jonah, Micah, and Elijah. She was raising them alone in a modest brownstone in Harlem, teaching piano to support her family. The news hit Alex like a ton of bricks. He had children, 4 beautiful, talented boys who shared his blood, but knew nothing about him. And their mother was nothing like the women in his social circle. Trinity Washington carried herself with quiet dignity, her grace visible in every movement. When Alex finally told Victoria about his discovery, her reaction was exactly what he'd feared. "Darling, you can't be serious," she said, setting down her champagne glass. "This will ruin everything. What will people say? A black woman and 4 children? The press will have a field day. They're my sons, Victoria. They're the result of a donation you made years ago. You don't owe them anything." Victoria's perfectly manicured nails drummed against the marble counter. "Besides, we're getting married in 3 months. I won't have this scandal overshadowing our wedding." But Alex couldn't let it go, especially not after his grandmother Eleanor, the family matriarch, found out about the boys. Eleanor Sterling was fighting terminal cancer, and her reaction surprised everyone. "Bring them to me," she demanded from her bed in the family mansion. "I want to meet my great-grandchildren before I die." "Mother, be reasonable," Alex's father protested. "Think of the family name." "I am thinking of the family," Eleanor shot back. "Those boys are Sterlings, whether you like it or not. And I won't have my last days poisoned by the same prejudices that have divided this family for too long." That evening, Alex sat alone in his penthouse, staring at a photo of the boys he'd managed to find online. They were at a children's concert, each holding a certificate, their smiles bright and innocent. Trinity stood behind them, her hands resting proudly on their shoulders. His phone buzzed with another message from Victoria. "Daddy's lawyers can handle this quietly. Just stay away from them." But Alex knew it was too late. He'd already fallen in love with those 4 pairs of blue eyes that mirrored his own. Now, He just had to find the courage to knock on Trinity Washington's door and face whatever came next. Little did he know that his whole world was about to change in ways he could never have imagined. Trinity Washington's day started early, as it always did. At 6 a.m. she was already in the kitchen of her Harlem brownstone, making breakfast for her 4 energetic boys. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows, catching the dust motes that danced around the old upright piano in the living room. "Noah, please help your brothers set the table," she called out, flipping pancakes. "Jonah, stop teasing Micah. Elijah, sweetie, did you finish your homework?" The boys were her whole world. Every day she thanked God for the miracle that brought them into her life. Sure, being a single mother to 4 active 5-year-olds wasn't easy, but Trinity had never been afraid of hard work. "Mommy, someone's at the door," Elijah, always the observant one, called out. Trinity wasn't expecting anyone this early. When she opened the door, she found herself face to face with an elderly woman in a wheelchair, accompanied by a nurse and a man who made her heart stop. Those eyes, the same eyes her boys had inherited. "Mrs. Sterling?" Trinity recognized her immediately from the society pages. "What are you doing here?" Eleanor Sterling looked frail but determined. "My grandson, Alex told me about the boys. I had to come see them for myself." Trinity's mind raced. She had chosen Alex Sterling III's profile at the fertility clinic because of his intelligence and musical background. She had no idea he was the heir to one of New York's biggest fortunes. And now here he was, standing in her doorway, looking as uncomfortable as she felt. "Please come in," Trinity said, her manners taking over despite her shock. "Boys, we have visitors." The 4 little faces that peeked around the corner made Eleanor gasp. There was no denying they were Sterling's. Those eyes, those features, it was like seeing Alex as a child multiplied by 4. "They're beautiful," Eleanor whispered, tears in her eyes. Alex couldn't take his eyes off the boys. "I'm sorry to come unannounced," he said to Trinity, "but my grandmother insisted." "Mommy, who are they?" Noah asked, always the brave one. Before Trinity could answer, Victoria Astor burst through the still open door, her designer heels clicking on the hardwood floor. "Alex, what are you doing here? I followed you because I knew you'd do something foolish." She stopped short at the sight of the boys. "Oh my God," she said, her voice dripping with disdain. "They really do look like you." Trinity straightened her spine. "Mrs. Astor, I don't know what you're doing in my home, but I won't have you speaking that way in front of my children." "Your children?" Victoria laughed coldly. "They're the result of a donation, a business transaction. Nothing more." "That's enough." Eleanor's voice cracked like a whip. "Victoria, if you can't behave civilly, you can wait in the car." The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. The boys huddled closer to Trinity, sensing something was wrong. Alex looked torn between his grandmother and his fiancée. "I have wonderful news," Victoria announced suddenly, her voice sugary sweet. "Alex, I was going to tell you tonight at dinner, but since we're all here, I'm pregnant with triplets." The room fell silent. Trinity saw something flash across Alex's face, doubt, confusion. But Eleanor's reaction was unexpected. "That's impossible," the old woman said firmly. "Alex had a vasectomy 3 years ago. I was with him at the hospital." Victoria's face went white. "What? No, that's not... You're lying." "I never lie," Eleanor said calmly, "and I think it's time for some truth in this family." Trinity felt a tug on her sleeve. "Mommy," Micah whispered loudly, "the pancakes are burning." The mundane comment broke the tension. Trinity hurried to the kitchen, grateful for the excuse to escape the drama unfolding in her living room, but Alex followed her. "I'm sorry about all this," he said, watching as she scraped burnt pancakes into the trash. "I never meant to disrupt your life." Trinity turned to face him. "Why are you really here, Mr. Sterling? What do you want from us?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But when I saw them last week, something changed. I can't explain it." "They're happy," Trinity said firmly. "We're happy. We don't need anything from you." "I understand, but my grandmother doesn't have much time left, and those boys, they're the only great-grandchildren she'll ever have." Back in the living room, Eleanor was already charming the boys, asking about their piano lessons and their favorite books. Victoria had stormed out, slamming the door behind her. "Perhaps," Trinity said slowly, "we could arrange some visits, for your grandmother's sake, but I have conditions." Alex nodded, relief visible on his face. "Anything. My sons come first, always. This isn't about you or your family name or your social status. It's about what's best for them." I agree completely. Neither of them realized it then, but that morning marked the beginning of a journey that would change all their lives forever. As they walked back to the living room, where Eleanor was teaching the boys a clapping game that made them giggle, the walls between their two worlds began to crumble, one brick at a time. The news of Victoria's fake pregnancy spread through New York's high society like wildfire. At the exclusive Sterling Industries charity gala, whispers followed Alex everywhere he went. Victoria hadn't shown her face in public for days, holed up in her family's mansion on Park Avenue. "Did you hear?" one socialite whispered to another over champagne. Not only did she lie about the pregnancy, but Alex has 4 other children, with a piano teacher from Harlem. Alex tried to focus on greeting donors and sponsors, but his mind kept drifting to Trinity and the boys. In the 2 weeks since that first meeting, he'd visited them 3 times. Each visit showed him something new about the family he never knew he had. Yesterday, he'd watched Jonah play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star on the piano, his small fingers careful on the keys. Noah had shown him a science project about dinosaurs. Micah had fallen asleep in his lap while he read them a story, and Elijah had asked him if he knew how to play baseball. "Alex, darling," a shrill voice interrupted his thoughts. Victoria's mother, Margaret Astor, was heading straight for him. "We simply must talk about this unfortunate situation." "There's nothing to talk about, Margaret." Alex tried to step away, but she grabbed his arm. "Don't be difficult. Victoria made a mistake, but she loves you. And these other children, well, we can handle that quietly. Money usually solves these little problems." Alex felt his anger rising. "Those little problems are my sons, and there's nothing to handle. Victoria lied to me, to everyone." "You're not thinking clearly," Margaret insisted. "What about your position in society? Your company's image? That woman and those children will ruin everything." "That woman," came Eleanor Sterling's voice from behind them, "has more class in her little finger than you have in your entire body, Margaret." Eleanor's wheelchair approached them, pushed by her nurse. Despite her illness, she still commanded attention in her elegant black dress and pearls. "Eleanor, be reasonable," Margaret pleaded. "Think of the scandal." "I'm thinking of my great-grandchildren," Eleanor said firmly, "and their wonderful mother, who's given them more love and stability than your daughter could ever understand." The argument attracted stares. Alex saw reporters taking notes. Tomorrow's headlines would be brutal, but he didn't care anymore. Meanwhile, in Harlem, Trinity was putting the boys to bed when her phone buzzed with a news alert. Someone had leaked photos of the boys to the press. The headline read, "Sterling heir's secret family revealed." Her hands shaking, Trinity opened the article. They had dug into her past, questioning her motives for choosing Alex's donor profile. They painted her as a gold digger who had deliberately sought out a wealthy donor. "Mommy!" Elijah stood in the doorway in his dinosaur pajamas. "Why are you crying?" Trinity quickly wiped her eyes. "Everything's fine, baby. Go back to bed." But everything wasn't fine. The next morning, reporters camped outside her house. Some parents cancelled their children's piano lessons. Trinity's carefully built world was crumbling. That's when Alex showed up, looking worried and determined. "I'm so sorry about this," he said, following her into the kitchen. "My lawyers are working to stop the stories, but the damage is done," Trinity finished, putting on a pot. "Serve tea." Her grandmother had always said there was no crisis that couldn't be helped by a cup of hot tea. "Let me help," Alex said softly. "Please, we can move you somewhere safe, somewhere private." Trinity slammed the teacup down harder than she meant to. "Run away? Hide? Is that what you think of me?" "No, my boys need stability. They need their home, their school, their friends. I won't have them think there's anything shameful about who they are or where they come from." Alex watched as she expertly prepared 2 cups of tea, adding honey to his when he mentioned he liked it sweet. The simple domestic moment felt more real than any of the fancy parties he'd ever attended. "You're right," he said finally. "Running isn't the answer, but let me help in other ways. Let me be part of their lives, really part of their lives." Trinity studied him over her teacup. "And what about Victoria? Your company, your perfect society life? None of that matters anymore. These past 2 weeks with you and the boys, they've shown me what really matters. Victoria's lies just made the decision easier." Before Trinity could respond, they heard excited voices from the living room. Eleanor had arrived for her daily visit with the boys, bearing books and games. "Grandma Eleanor!" the boys shouted in unison, rushing to hug her. Trinity and Alex watched from the kitchen doorway as Eleanor taught the boys to play checkers, her frail hands moving the pieces while they bounced excitedly in their seats. "She's amazing with them," Trinity admitted. "She's different with them too," Alex said. "More alive. The doctors say spending time with the boys is better than any medicine." Trinity felt tears in her eyes. "More tea?" "Yes, please." Alex moved closer, helping her reach the tea tin on the high shelf. Their hands brushed, and both felt a spark that neither was ready to acknowledge. Outside, the reporters continued to take pictures. Society columns speculated about the scandal. Victoria plotted her revenge. But inside that cozy Harlem kitchen, something real and precious was beginning to grow, as natural as honey sweetening tea. Victoria Astor wasn't used to losing. She sat in her father's wood-paneled study, watching him make phone calls that would destroy Trinity Washington's life. "Yes, look into her background," Richard Astor said into the phone. "Every detail, tax records, credit history, everything. Find something we can use." "Daddy, I want her ruined," Victoria said, twirling her diamond engagement ring. "The one." She still refused to return to Alex. "She took everything from me." "No one makes a fool of the Astors," Richard agreed. "I've already called the board members at Sterling Industries. They're not happy about Alex's little scandal." Meanwhile, Alex was experiencing the simple joy of taking his sons to the park. Trinity had finally agreed to let him spend Saturday afternoons with the boys. Today, he was teaching them how to fly kites. "Higher, Daddy, make it go higher." "Noah," shouted, jumping up and down. Alex's heart skipped a beat. It was the first time any of them had called him Daddy. He looked over at Trinity, who sat on a nearby bench pretending to read a book. "Did you hear that?" he asked, sitting next to her. "They've been asking about you," Trinity admitted. "What to call you, who you are to them. I told them the truth, that you're their father and you want to be in their lives." "Thank you," Alex said softly, "for giving me this chance." Their moment was interrupted by Alex's phone buzzing. It was his secretary, Paula. "Mr. Sterling, you need to come to the office right away. The board has called an emergency meeting." At Sterling Industries, the atmosphere was tense. Richard Astor sat at the head of the boardroom table, though he had no official position in the company. "Alex," Richard said, smoothly, "we're concerned about the company's image. These recent revelations have our shareholders worried." "My personal life has nothing to do with my ability to run this company," Alex argued. "On the contrary," Richard pulled out a stack of papers. "We've discovered some interesting information about Ms. Washington. Did you know she filed for bankruptcy 6 years ago, or that she was rejected from multiple orchestras due to attitude problems?" Alex felt sick. They'd been investigating Trinity. "Those rejections were because she spoke up about racial discrimination in classical music," he said through gritted teeth, "and she filed for bankruptcy because of medical bills after a car accident. She's worked hard to rebuild her life. The point is," Richard continued, "she's not the kind of person who should be associated with Sterling Industries. So here's our offer. Either you cut all ties with her and the children, or we'll be forced to call for a vote of no confidence. You're blackmailing me. We're protecting this company's interests. Victoria is willing to forgive your indiscretion. You can return to your real life, and we'll make sure Ms. Washington and the children are well provided for. From a distance, of course." Alex stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. "I've made a lot of mistakes in my life," he said, "but walking away from my children won't be one of them. I quit." Back in Harlem, Trinity was facing her own crisis. Parents were pulling their children from her piano lessons in droves. Someone had spread rumors that she was using the studio to trap wealthy men. "I just can't risk my reputation," one mother said as she cancelled her daughter's lessons. "You understand, don't you?" Eleanor Sterling, who now spent most afternoons at Trinity's house, watched as another parent left. "Don't let them break you," the older woman said, holding Trinity's hand. "You're stronger than all of them put together." "I don't know how much more I can take," Trinity admitted. "The boys need new shoes for school, and with all these cancellations—" "Let me help," Eleanor offered, not for the first time. "No," Trinity said firmly. "I've always taken care of my boys on my own." That's when Alex burst in, looking both angry and excited. "I quit my job," he announced. "You what?" Trinity stared at him. "The board, well, really the Astors, tried to force me to choose between the company and our family." He took Trinity's hands in his. "It wasn't even a choice. Alex, you can't give up everything for us." "I'm not giving up anything that matters," he said. "Besides, I've been wanting to start my own company anyway. Something smaller, more meaningful. Eleanor watched them with a knowing smile. Well, since my grandson is currently unemployed, perhaps he could help you teach piano. He was quite good when he was younger. I was terrible, and you know it, grandmother, Alex laughed. Hey, what's all this serious talk? Jonah interrupted, coming in from the backyard with his brothers. Can we have ice cream? Looking at their hopeful faces, Trinity felt her worries fade a little. Ice cream sounds perfect, she said, but their peaceful moment wouldn't last long. Across town, Victoria Astor was about to unleash her most vicious plan yet. Are you sure about this? Her father asked, looking at the legal documents in front of him. Absolutely, Victoria said, her eyes cold. If I can't have Alex Sterling, I'll take everything else he loves, starting with those boys. The papers on Richard's desk were custody documents, filled with false allegations that would shock New York society to its core. Victoria's revenge was just beginning. The morning started with a knock on Trinity's door. When she opened it, two stern-faced social workers stood there with official-looking papers. Ms. Washington, we need to speak with you about your children. Trinity's heart stopped. Behind her, the boys were eating breakfast, arguing about who got the last pancake. Eleanor was there too, having stayed overnight because her health was declining. What is this about? Trinity asked, trying to keep her voice steady. We've received serious allegations about the children's welfare, one social worker said. Ms. Victoria Astor has filed a report claiming child endangerment and possible exploitation. That's ridiculous. Trinity's hands shook as she read the documents. The allegations were horrible. Claims that she was using the boys to extort money, that her home was unsafe, that she was emotionally manipulating them. We'll need to interview the children, the second social worker said. Separately. Like hell you will. Eleanor's voice rang out as she wheeled herself to the door. Not without their lawyer present. Ma'am, we have a court order, and I have Judge Harrison's personal phone number, Eleanor shot back. He's an old friend. Shall we call him? The social workers hesitated. Eleanor Sterling's influence was legendary. You have 24 hours to arrange a proper interview with legal representation. They finally agreed. As soon as they left, Trinity collapsed onto the couch. She's trying to take my babies. Over my dead body, Eleanor said firmly, already on her phone. James, it's Eleanor Sterling. I need the best family lawyer in New York. Today, Alex arrived. Within the hour, furious after hearing the news, Victoria's gone too far this time. The boys picked up on the tension, gathering around Trinity. Mommy, are you sad? Elijah asked, climbing into her lap. No, baby, everything's going to be fine. But her voice cracked on the last word. Alex watched them, his heart breaking. In the months since he'd found his sons, they'd become his whole world. And Trinity, he couldn't deny his feelings for her anymore. I won't let them hurt you, he said softly. Any of you. Eleanor's lawyer arrived that afternoon. Patricia Chen was known for taking down corrupt judges and winning impossible cases. These allegations are ridiculous, Patricia said, reviewing the documents. But Victoria Astor has connections. We need to be prepared for a fight. What do they want? Trinity asked. According to this, they're seeking to prove you unfit and transfer custody to Alex, with Victoria as stepmother once they remarry. Patricia looked at Alex. I assume that's not happening? Never, Alex said firmly. I want to be in my children's lives, but Trinity is their mother, the best mother they could have. Eleanor watched the way Alex looked at Trinity. Perhaps, she said thoughtfully, there's another solution. Grandmother. Alex recognized that tone. She had an idea. You love her, Eleanor said simply. Don't deny it, I've seen how you look at her. And Trinity, dear, you're not exactly subtle either. Trinity and Alex stared at each other, both blushing. That's not... We haven't... Trinity stammered. Oh, please. Eleanor waved her hand. Life's too short for this nonsense. Alex, do you love Trinity? Yes, he said without hesitation. But I didn't want to pressure her, to make her think that I was just interested in your money. Trinity finished. That's what I was worried about too. Especially now, with everything happening. This is very sweet, Patricia interrupted. But how does this help our case? Eleanor smiled. Because if they're married, Victoria's entire argument falls apart. The boys will have both parents. In a stable home, Trinity's financial situation becomes irrelevant, and the Sterling name she's so worried about stays intact. You want us to get married to stop Victoria? Trinity asked incredulously. No, Eleanor said. I want you to get married because you love each other, and my great-grandchildren deserve to see what real love looks like. Stopping Victoria is just a bonus. Alex moved to kneel in front of Trinity, taking her hands in his. She's right. About everything. I love you, Trinity. I think I've loved you since that first day in your kitchen. You and the boys, you're my real family. Trinity felt tears in her eyes. But what about your life, your world? You are my world. He squeezed her hands. Marry me. Not because of Victoria. Not because of the custody battle, but because we belong together. Say yes, Mommy, Noah shouted. His brothers joined in, jumping up and down with excitement. Trinity looked at her sons, then at Alex. Yes, she whispered. Yes. Eleanor wiped away tears. Well, that's settled then. Patricia, how quickly can we arrange a wedding? Wait, Alex said. If we're doing this, we're doing it right. He turned back to Trinity. I know this started because of Victoria's threats, but I want a real wedding. I want to show the world how much I love you. And I want to wear a pretty dress, Jonah added, making everyone laugh. But their joy was interrupted by Eleanor having a coughing fit. The nurse rushed to her side with medication. Just promise me one thing, Eleanor said when she could speak again. Don't wait too long. I want to dance at my grandson's wedding. Trinity and Alex shared a look. They were ready to fight for their family, but now they were fighting for time too. Eleanor's health was failing fast, and Victoria was still out there, plotting her next move. The next morning, Victoria's face turned purple with rage when she read the newspaper headline, "Sterling heir to wed mother of his children. A true love story." They can't do this, she hissed at her father. Do something. Richard Astor picked up his phone. Don't worry, Princess. I have one last card to play. By the time I'm done, there won't be a wedding or a happy ending for Trinity Washington. Richard Astor's plan didn't take long to unfold. 3 days before the wedding, Trinity's past came crashing down around her. Have you seen this? Alex rushed into Trinity's kitchen, holding a newspaper. The headline screamed, Sterling Brides. Dark secret. A history of violence? Trinity snatched the paper. The article claimed she'd been fired from the Boston Symphony Orchestra for attacking another musician. There were quotes from anonymous sources describing her as unstable and dangerous. This is a lie, Trinity said, her voice shaking. I left Boston because the conductor was harassing me. When I reported him, they forced me out. I know, Alex said, pulling her close, but Richard Astor's spreading these stories everywhere. The custody judge has ordered another hearing. Eleanor, who practically lived with them now as her health declined, wheeled herself into the kitchen. We need to find someone from Boston, willing to tell the truth. Trinity shook her head. Everyone was too afraid to speak up back then. That's why I left. Mommy? Micah appeared in the doorway. My teacher said we can't come to school anymore. She said you're a bad person. Trinity felt her heart breaking. Come here, baby. She hugged her son tight. Sometimes people believe lies about others. But you know who I am. You know I love you. We all love you, Alex added, joining the hug. The other boys ran in to join them too. Eleanor watched the family embrace, then picked up her phone. It's time to fight fire with fire. While Trinity and Alex met with their lawyer, Eleanor made calls to every contact she'd collected in her decades as a society queen. By evening, she had what she needed. Victoria, Eleanor said into her phone, come to my house now, and bring your father. Victoria and Richard arrived looking smug, certain they had the upper hand. Really, Eleanor, Richard said, involving yourself in this mess is beneath you. Eleanor's nurse wheeled her closer to them. Despite her frail appearance, her eyes were sharp as ever. You know what's beneath me, Richard. Covering up your affair with your secretary 20 years ago, the one that produced a daughter you've kept hidden in Connecticut. Richard's face went white. How did you... I have friends everywhere, Richard. Friends who've kept quiet about your secrets for years. But if one more story about Trinity appears in the papers, if one more person cancels their children's piano lessons, if one more cruel word is spoken about my future daughter-in-law, well, I might get forgetful about which secrets I'm supposed to keep. Victoria stared at her father. Daddy, what is she talking about? That's not all, Eleanor continued. Should we discuss the real reason the symphony board forced Trinity out? About how your friend Harrison Morris, the conductor, has a history of harassment complaints that were mysteriously buried? You're bluffing, Richard said, but his voice wavered. Try me. Eleanor handed him a thick folder. This is copies. The originals are in my lawyer's safe. After they left, Eleanor had another coughing fit. Her nurse rushed to help her. Was it worth it? The nurse asked, giving Eleanor her medicine. Family is always worth it, Eleanor whispered. The next day, All the negative stories about Trinity disappeared from the papers. The custody hearing was mysteriously cancelled. Even Victoria's social media attacks stopped. At Trinity's house, wedding preparations were in full swing. The boys were practicing their roles as ring bearers, though they kept arguing about who got to go first. "I had another idea," Alex said as he helped Trinity hang decorations. "What if we had the wedding here in your backyard?" Trinity looked surprised. "Not at the Plaza Hotel. This is our real home, where our family came together. The Plaza means nothing compared to that." Trinity kissed him softly. "I love you. I love you too, and I can't wait to be your husband." The backyard transformation was amazing. Eleanor hired the best decorators in the city, but let Trinity make all the decisions. White flowers and twinkling lights turned the modest space into a fairy tale garden. The night before the wedding, Trinity found Eleanor alone in the living room, looking at old photos. "Thank you," Trinity said, sitting beside her, "for everything." "No," Eleanor took her hand. "Thank you. You gave me something I never thought. I'd have a real family, one built on love instead of obligations. Are you sure you're strong enough for tomorrow?" Eleanor smiled. "Wild horses couldn't keep me away. Now go get some sleep. Tomorrow you become a Sterling. Though if you ask me, you've been one all along." But as Trinity headed upstairs, Eleanor had another coughing fit. This one worse than before. The nurse rushed to call the doctor. In his hotel room across town, Richard Astor stared at the morning paper he'd planned to release tomorrow. The headline would have destroyed Trinity's reputation forever. Instead, he slowly fed it into the shredder. Victoria watched him from the doorway. "So that's it? We just let them win?" "It's over, Victoria. Eleanor Sterling just beat us at our own game." But Victoria's eyes gleamed with a dangerous light. "No," she said softly. "It's not over until I say it's over. And I have one last surprise for their perfect wedding day." She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Hello? Yes, I'd like to report something about Trinity Washington's immigration status." The morning of the wedding dawned bright and clear. Trinity's backyard was transformed into a wonderland of white roses and silver ribbons. The boys were already up at sunrise, too excited to sleep. "Mommy, when do we put on our suits?" Noah asked, bouncing on Trinity's bed. "Is Daddy bringing the rings?" Jonah chimed in. "Can we have cake for breakfast?" Micah added. Only Elijah noticed that their mother seemed worried. "Are you okay, Mommy?" Trinity hugged her sensitive son. "Just wedding day nerves, baby." But it was more than that. She couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. Maybe it was the way Eleanor had looked so pale at last night's rehearsal dinner, or maybe it was the strange car she'd seen parked across the street. At the Sterling mansion, Alex was adjusting his tie when his phone rang. It was Patricia Chen, their lawyer. "Alex, we have a problem. Someone reported Trinity to immigration services. They're claiming her student visa expired years ago and she's been here illegally." "That's impossible. Trinity was born in Chicago." "I know, but they've frozen her accounts pending investigation. They're threatening to show up at the wedding." Alex cursed. "Victoria, it has to be her. I'm already on it. I've got Trinity's birth certificate and passport, but it might take time to clear this up." In Trinity's bedroom, her best friend Maya was helping her into her wedding dress when they heard commotion downstairs. "Ms. Washington," a stern voice called out, "this is Immigration Services. We need to speak with you immediately." Trinity felt her knees go weak. The boys, hearing the voices, ran into her room. "Mommy, there are men in suits downstairs," Micah said, scared. Just then, they heard Eleanor's voice ring out. "I don't care who you think you are. You are not disrupting my grandson's wedding." Trinity rushed to the stairs, still in her half-buttoned wedding dress. Two federal agents stood in her living room, facing off against Eleanor in her wheelchair. "Ma'am, we have reports about Ms. Washington's immigration status." "Reports?" Eleanor's voice could have frozen fire. "From whom? That spiteful Astor girl? Well, here's something for your reports." Eleanor's nurse handed the agents a thick envelope. "That's Trinity's complete history. Birth certificate from Chicago General Hospital, passport, school records, everything. I had my lawyer prepare it weeks ago just in case Victoria tried something stupid." The agents looked through the documents. "These appear to be in order, but we'll need to verify." "By all means, verify. And while you're at it, you might want to look into who filed a false report. I believe that's a federal offense." Upstairs, Trinity sat on her bed, surrounded by her sons. "I can't do this," she whispered. "Maybe Victoria's right. I don't belong in their world." "No, you don't," came Alex's voice from the doorway. Despite the tradition of not seeing the bride, he'd rushed over as soon as he heard. "You don't belong in their world because you're better than it. You're real, Trinity. You're everything I never knew I needed." "Daddy!" The boys ran to hug him. "The guests will be arriving soon," Trinity said, wiping her eyes. "Let them wait." Alex sat beside her. "This is our day. Victoria can't ruin it unless we let her." Downstairs, the agents were leaving, apologizing profusely to Eleanor. But the excitement had been too much for her. She was having trouble breathing. "I just need my medicine," she insisted to her worried nurse. "I'm not missing this wedding." By noon, the backyard was filled with guests. Most were Trinity's friends, fellow musicians, parents of her piano students who had stayed loyal, neighbors who had watched her boys grow up. On Alex's side, the crowd was smaller but significant. The few society friends who had stood by him, some loyal employees, and his mother, who had finally chosen her son over social pressure. Victoria watched from her car down the street as guests arrived. Her last plan had failed. She gripped her steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. "I could just drive right through that fence," she muttered, "right into their perfect little ceremony." "That's enough." Her father's voice was firm from the passenger seat. "You're only hurting yourself now. Let it go." Inside, Trinity was finally ready. Her dress was simple but elegant, and her bouquet included 4 small white roses, one for each of her sons. "You look like a princess, Mommy," Jonah said. Eleanor insisted on helping Trinity with her veil. "I had this made for you," she said, placing a delicate silver tiara on Trinity's head. "It's been in the Sterling family for generations. Now it's yours." "Eleanor, I can't." "You can and you will." Eleanor squeezed her hand. "You're the daughter I always wanted." But as she reached to adjust the veil, Eleanor suddenly gasped and clutched her chest. "Grandmother!" Trinity caught her as she started to collapse. "Just give me a moment." Eleanor's voice was weak. The nurse rushed forward with medication, but Eleanor waved her away. "No, no hospital, not today." "Eleanor, the wedding can wait," Trinity said, terrified by how pale the older woman looked. "Absolutely not." Eleanor's voice was faint but determined. "I've waited too long to see this family whole again. Help me to my chair. And don't you dare tell Alex until after the ceremony." Trinity wanted to argue, but she saw the same stubborn determination in Eleanor's eyes that she often saw in her son's. Instead, she carefully helped Eleanor to her wheelchair, trying to hide her own tears. Outside, the wedding music began to play. The boys lined up with their pillows, holding the rings, ready for their big moment. Alex stood under the flower arch, his heart pounding as he waited for his bride. But from her seat in the front row, Eleanor was growing paler by the minute, even as she smiled bravely. The story of their love was about to reach its climax, but would it be the happy ending they all dreamed of? Or would Victoria's darkness and Eleanor's fading health cast a shadow over their perfect day? The wedding music swelled as the boys started down the aisle. Noah and Jonah walked perfectly in step, while Micah kept stopping to wave at people he knew. Elijah, bringing up the rear, kept glancing back worriedly at his grandmother Eleanor. Then Trinity appeared and everyone gasped. She was radiant in her simple white dress, Eleanor's antique tiara catching the sunlight, but only Eleanor noticed how Trinity's hands shook slightly as she gripped her bouquet, worried about the older woman's condition. Alex couldn't take his eyes off his bride. All the society parties, all the business success, all the wealth, none of it had ever made him feel the way he did right now, watching the woman he loved walk toward him with their 4 beautiful sons, leading the way. But just as Trinity reached the altar, a commotion erupted at the back of the garden. "Stop! Stop this ridiculous ceremony!" Victoria Astor stumbled down the aisle, clearly drunk, her designer dress muddy at the hem. "You can't marry her, Alex, I won't let you." The guests turned in shock. Alex's mother started to stand, but Eleanor raised her hand. "Let me handle this," she whispered, though her voice was growing weaker. Eleanor's nurse wheeled her directly into Victoria's path. "Enough," Eleanor said, her voice carrying despite its weakness. "Look at yourself, Victoria. Is this really who you want to be?" Victoria's mascara was running down her cheeks. "He was mine. We had a perfect life planned." "No," Eleanor said gently. "You had a perfect lie planned. But look around you. Look at the love in this garden. This is what's real." Something in Eleanor's voice made Victoria really look at Alex gazing at Trinity with pure adoration, at the 4 little boys hugging their mother's skirts protectively, at the simple beauty of the backyard wedding filled with people who truly cared for each other. Victoria's voice cracked. I don't know how to lose. Then it's time you learned, Eleanor said. Go home, Victoria. Find out who you are without all the pretense. There's still time to become someone you can be proud of. Richard Astor appeared then, gently taking his daughter's arm. Come on, princess, this isn't our place anymore. As they left, Eleanor turned back to Trinity and Alex. Well, don't just stand there. Get married. The ceremony resumed, but Eleanor's color was getting worse. Trinity saw the nurse quietly checking her pulse. Do you, Alexander Sterling III, take Trinity Washington to be your lawfully wedded wife? The minister asked. I do, Alex said firmly, slipping the ring on Trinity's finger. With all my heart. And do you, Trinity Washington, take Alexander Sterling III to be your lawfully wedded husband? I do, Trinity said through happy tears as she placed the ring on Alex's finger. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. As Alex pulled Trinity into their first kiss as husband and wife, their sons cheered and the guests applauded. But Eleanor's applause was weak, her breathing labored. During the reception, Eleanor insisted on having one dance with Alex, even if it meant staying in her wheelchair while he held her hands and swayed gently. I'm so proud of you, she told him. You finally found what really matters. I learned it from you, grandmother, Alex said softly. You taught me that love is more important than status or money. Eleanor smiled, then turned to Trinity. May I have a dance with my new daughter too? Trinity knelt beside Eleanor's wheelchair, taking her fragile hands. Thank you for everything, for believing in us, for fighting for us. No, my dear, thank you for bringing love back into this family, for giving me such wonderful great-grandchildren. Promise me something? Anything. Keep teaching them music. Keep their hearts open to love and beauty, and tell them stories about their crazy old great-grandmother who knew a good thing when she saw it. Eleanor, Trinity felt tears coming. It's all right, dear. I held on for this day. I got to see my family whole again. Now I can rest. The nurse noticed Eleanor's breathing changing and quietly signaled for an ambulance. But Eleanor squeezed Trinity's hand one last time. Dance with your husband. Be happy, love those boys. That's all that matters in the end. As the ambulance arrived discreetly at the side of the house, the band played on. Alex and Trinity shared their first dance as husband and wife, their sons joining them on the dance floor, while Eleanor watched from her wheelchair, a peaceful smile on her face. The sun was setting over Trinity's backyard, casting a golden glow over the celebration. In that moment, despite the drama that had come before and the challenges that still lay ahead, love had won. A new kind of family had been born, one built on truth, acceptance, and the courage to follow your heart. Eleanor closed her eyes, still smiling. She had done what she set out to do. The Sterling family was whole again, transformed by the power of real love. Now she could finally rest, knowing her legacy would live on in the laughter of 4 little boys with their father's blue eyes and their mother's fierce spirit. The ambulance lights cast red and blue shadows across Trinity's wedding dress as they loaded Eleanor into the vehicle. Despite the paramedics' protests, she refused to let them remove her fancy dress or Eleanor's tiara. I'm still a bride, she insisted, holding Eleanor's hand, and she's still my grandmother. Alex sat on Eleanor's other side, their sons crowded in, the doorway of the ambulance with worried faces. The wedding guests had gone home, leaving scattered flower petals and half-empty champagne glasses in the backyard. Boys! Eleanor's voice was barely a whisper now. Come closer. The 4 little boys climbed carefully into the ambulance. Noah and Jonah were trying not to cry, while Micah and Elijah already had tears running down their faces. I have a special job for each of you, Eleanor said. Noah, you're the oldest. Watch out for your brothers. Jonah, keep playing music. You have a gift just like your mother. Micah, don't ever lose that fighting spirit. And Elijah, my quiet one, keep seeing the truth in people's hearts. We love you, Grandma Eleanor, Noah said, his voice shaking. I love you too, all of you. Alex, I'm here, Grandmother. You've become the man I always knew you could be. Trinity brought out your true heart. Trinity wiped away tears. Eleanor, please hold on. The doctors. No more doctors, dear. I got my wish. I saw my grandson marry the love of his life. I saw my great-grandchildren happy and loved. Now it's time. The paramedics wanted to leave, but Eleanor gripped Trinity's hand with surprising strength. The house, she said. The Sterling mansion. It's yours now. What? Alex and Trinity said together. I changed my will last week. The mansion goes to you and the boys. Fill it with music and laughter. Make it a real home, not just a museum of old money. Mother will be furious, Alex said, though he was smiling through his tears. Your mother, Eleanor coughed. She'll come around. She already has more than you know. Promise me you'll give her a chance? We promise, Trinity said softly. Eleanor's eyes were getting heavy. The garden, plant roses, red ones, and let the boys run on the lawn. No more. No more keeping up appearances. Grandma? Elijah's small voice quivered. Are you going to heaven? Eleanor smiled at her youngest great-grandson. Yes, darling, but I'll be watching over all of you, every piano recital, every baseball game, every moment. Her voice trailed off. The monitor beside her began to beep. We need to go now, the paramedic said firmly. At the hospital, the family waited while doctors worked, but they all knew. Eleanor Sterling had held on for her grandson's wedding, and now she could rest. The next morning, Trinity sat in Eleanor's hospital room, still wearing her wedding dress, now wrinkled and tear-stained. Alex had taken the boys to get breakfast, giving her a moment alone with the woman who had changed their lives. I'll keep my promises, Trinity whispered to Eleanor's still form. All of them. The boys will grow up knowing music and love. The mansion will be filled with laughter. And Alex, I'll love him enough for both of us. When Alex returned, he found Trinity at the window watching the sunrise. The boys are asking when we can go home, he said softly. Which home? Trinity asked. My little house or the mansion, their home now, our home. Alex wrapped his arms around her. Unless you'd rather not. Trinity turned to face him. Eleanor wanted us to make it a real home, to break down all those old barriers. Are you ready for that? I'm ready for anything as long as I have you and our sons. Back at Trinity's house, the boys were packing their favorite toys, still in their rumpled wedding clothes. Will we have our own rooms at the big house? Jonah asked. Can we play in the fancy rooms? Micah added. Will Daddy live with us all? The time now? Noah wanted to know. Only Elijah was quiet, holding the little music box Eleanor had given him last week. What's wrong, baby? Trinity asked him. Grandma Eleanor said this box was magic, that whenever we play it, she'll hear us in heaven. He opened it, letting the tinkling notes of Somewhere Over the Rainbow fill the room. Trinity hugged him, close. Then we'll play it every day. But their quiet moment was interrupted by a knock at the door. When Alex opened it, his mother stood there, looking uncertain. I heard about Mother, she said. About the will, too. Trinity tensed, ready for another battle. But Catherine Sterling surprised them, all by kneeling down to look her grandsons in the eyes. Would it be all right if I helped you decorate your new rooms? Your great-grandmother told me each of you loves different colors. The boys looked at their parents. At Trinity's nod, Noah spoke up. I like blue, like the sky. I love red, Jonah added. Soon they were all chattering about colors and toys, and which rooms had the best views. As Trinity watched her new mother-in-law tentatively bonding with her sons, she felt Eleanor's presence. This was what the old woman had wanted all along. Not just a marriage, but a true healing of the family. Alex squeezed her hand. Ready to start our new life? Trinity touched Eleanor's tiara, still in her hair. She gave us such a precious gift. Love? That, and the courage to break down walls, both real and invisible ones. Outside, a light rain began to fall, washing away the last traces of yesterday's wedding. But in Trinity's heart, the sun was rising on a new day, a new family, and a new kind of happily ever after. 1 year later, the Sterling mansion had never looked more alive. Music drifted from the windows as Trinity taught her advanced piano class in what used to be the formal dining room, now converted into a stunning music studio. Eleanor's portrait smiled down on them from above the grand piano. Beautiful playing, Sarah, Trinity encouraged one of her students. Remember what I always say. Music comes from the heart. Her students finished in unison, making her smile. Her sons had taught them that motto. In the backyard, Alex was coaching Noah and Jonah in baseball, while Micah built an elaborate sandcastle in the sandbox they'd installed. Elijah sat under a tree, reading a book almost too big for his small hands. The formal gardens had been transformed. Alongside the traditional rose bushes, there was now a vegetable patch where the boys grew carrots and tomatoes. A treehouse stood in the ancient oak tree, its windows decorated with the boys' artwork. Catherine Sterling, who now visited every Sunday for family dinner, walked through the garden with her morning coffee. She smiled at the changes that would have once horrified her. The mansion's transformation reflected her own, less concerned with appearances, more focused on the joy of real family connections. "Mom!" Micah ran to hug her legs. "Look what I made!" He proudly showed her a clay sculpture he'd created in his art class. "It's beautiful, darling," Catherine said, meaning it. "We'll put it right next to the others." The entrance hall of the mansion had become a gallery of the boys' artwork, their creative expressions given the same prominence as the ancestral portraits. Eleanor would have loved it. Inside her home office, Trinity was on the phone with her lawyer. "Yes, the Music Scholarship Foundation is ready to launch. We'll announce it at next month's benefit concert." The Eleanor Sterling Foundation for Young Musicians was Trinity's way of honoring her grandmother-in-law's memory. It would provide opportunities for talented children who couldn't afford music lessons, breaking down barriers just as Eleanor had done. Alex appeared in the doorway just as she hung up. "Ready for our surprise?" Trinity nodded, excitement bubbling up. They gathered the boys and headed to the mansion's west wing, which had been under renovation for months. "Close your eyes, everyone," Alex instructed. When they opened them, they gasped. The dusty old ballroom had been transformed into a magnificent concert hall with perfect acoustics and seating for 200. But what made Trinity's eyes fill with tears was the name engraved above the stage, the Eleanor Sterling Memorial Hall for the Performing Arts. "Now you can teach more students," Alex said softly, "and our boys can perform in a real concert hall, right here at home." "It's perfect," Trinity whispered. That evening, the family gathered for their weekly Sunday dinner. The formal dining room table had been replaced with a cozier one that Catherine had found at an antique market. As they passed dishes around, laughter and conversation flowed freely. "I saw Victoria yesterday," Catherine mentioned carefully. The room got quiet. After Eleanor's funeral, Victoria had left New York, checking herself into a rehabilitation center. "She's doing better," Catherine continued. "She's teaching art to children at the community center. She asked about you all, and she's..." "Sorry." Trinity squeezed Alex's hand under the table. "Maybe someday she can come to one of our concerts." "I'd like that," Alex said. Grandmother believed in second chances. After dinner, the boys begged for their favorite bedtime ritual. Trinity sat at the piano while they gathered around, just as they had in their old house, but now the music soared through grand halls instead of a cozy living room. As Trinity played Somewhere Over the Rainbow, Elijah opened Eleanor's music box to accompany her. The combined melody was magical. "Do you think Grandma Eleanor can hear us?" Jonah asked. "Always," Trinity assured him. "Remember what she said about music? It's the language of the heart," the boys chorused. Later that night, Trinity and Alex stood in Eleanor's old room, now a beautiful library filled with books and family photos. The latest addition was a large portrait of Eleanor with all 4 boys, taken at the wedding. "Sometimes I still expect to see her wheeling around a corner, ready to give advice or fight another battle for us," Trinity said. "She's still here," Alex replied, holding her close. "In the music, in the laughter, in every wall we break down and every life we change." Trinity touched her growing belly, where their newest little Sterling was just beginning to show. "Alex, it's a girl." His eyes lit up. "A girl? We'll call her Eleanor Rose Sterling." Alex kissed her tenderly. "Perfect." From her portrait, Eleanor seemed to smile down at them. Outside, the garden she loved bloomed with new life. Upstairs, 4 little boys dreamed of baseball games and piano concerts. In the city beyond their gates, other families were being helped by Eleanor's legacy through Trinity's foundation. And in the heart of what was once a cold mansion showcasing wealth and status, love had built a real home, just as Eleanor had wished. The end.